At 77, Steven Spielberg, the man who taught the world to dream, breaks his usual silence. For once, he's not talking about box office numbers, awards, or the art of directing. He's talking about people, the five souls who shaped his journey, the ones he loves, protects, and will always carry in his heart. He smiles when asked about them. "I can't talk about my life," he says softly, "without talking about them." It's not about scandals nor the spotlight. It's about gratitude, loyalty, and the quiet moments that last longer than fame. And so, here they are. The five names that define the man behind the movies, five stories that reveal the heart of Hollywood's greatest storyteller. Number 5, Tom Hanks, the brother on every battlefield. The fifth name on Spielberg's list is Tom Hanks, the man he calls my brother on and off the battlefield. Their connection began nearly 3 decades ago when Spielberg was searching for the right soul to lead Saving Private Ryan. He wasn't just casting a soldier, he was looking for someone who could carry the weight of compassion beneath the armor of duty. When he met Hanks, he didn't just find an actor, he found the embodiment of quiet heroism. On set, something extraordinary happened. Spielberg didn't direct Tom with strict commands or heavy notes. He let silence and trust fill the space between them. A camera operator later recalled, sometimes they didn't even need to speak. One nod from Steven, one glance from Tom, and the scene was alive. That rare chemistry became the foundation of one of Hollywood's most enduring collaborations. Together they created worlds, from the moral chaos of Saving Private Ryan to the bittersweet humanity of Catch Me If You Can, the quiet melancholy of The Terminal, and the deep reflection of Bridge of Spies. Each story carried a shared heartbeat, Spielberg's vision and Hanks's soul moving in rhythm. In a rare interview, Spielberg once said softly, "Tom has the kind of heart this business doesn't teach. It's something you're born with." For him, Hanks represents everything good that survived in an industry built on illusion, integrity, empathy, and unshakable loyalty. Their friendship isn't loud, it's steady, the kind that survives time, success, and silence. When they speak today, they don't talk about films or awards. They talk about their families, their fears, the fleeting nature of life. Perhaps that's why Spielberg smiles whenever he mentions Hanks. It's not just about the movies they made together. It's about the man who reminded him that greatness has nothing to do with fame, and everything to do with kindness. Number 4, Drew Barrymore, the little girl who saved his sense of wonder. Number 4 is Drew Barrymore, the child who taught Spielberg to believe in magic again. It was 1981 when a small, bright-eyed girl walked into an audition for a film about friendship and imagination. Spielberg remembered that moment vividly. "She wasn't acting," he once said. "She was living." That film would become E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and Drew Barrymore would become the beating heart of it. During filming, Spielberg noticed something rare, an innocence untouched by the cynicism of Hollywood. He became her protector, guiding her through a world too vast for a 6-year-old to navigate alone. A crew member once recalled, Steven treated Drew like his own daughter. He shielded her from the noise, made sure she still had time to play. As E.T. became a global phenomenon, fame arrived faster than childhood could keep up. Reporters, parties, flashing cameras, it was overwhelming. But Spielberg never left her side. When the lights got too bright, he reminded her to stay grounded, to remember that she was more than the character the world adored. Years later, when Drew stumbled under the weight of early stardom, Spielberg was still there, quietly, gently. He sent her letters filled with warmth and patience, never judgment. When she married, he walked her down the aisle, as a father would. "He believed in me before I believed in myself," she later said. For Spielberg, Drew represents something irreplaceable, the childlike wonder that every artist must protect. "Whenever I see her smile," he once admitted, "I remember why I started making movies." It wasn't about spectacle or success. It was about the spark, that pure human connection that makes stories timeless. Their bond has outlasted decades of fame and chaos. And in a world that often forgets its innocence, Spielberg found his again, in the laughter of a little girl who never stopped believing in him. Number 3, J.J. Abrams, the protege who carried the torch. Forward, number 3 on Spielberg's list is J.J. Abrams, a man who grew from a teenage admirer into one of the defining storytellers of a new generation. Their paths first crossed long before Hollywood knew his name. Abrams was just 16, shooting home movies on his Super 8 camera when fate and a local news story brought him to Spielberg's attention. Back in the late 1970s, Spielberg had boxes of his old Super 8 reels sitting in an archive. He needed someone to restore them, and someone at Universal recommended two promising high school students. One of them was J.J. Abrams. That quiet act of trust became the spark of mentorship that would shape Abrams' life. Years later, when Abrams began directing, he carried Spielberg's fingerprints on every frame. The warmth, the sense of awe, the human heart hidden beneath spectacle. "I didn't just learn filmmaking from Steven," Abrams once said. "I learned empathy." Insiders recall that Spielberg followed Abrams' career closely, offering guidance from afar. When Super 8 was released in 2011, a love letter to Spielberg's early films, he called J.J. personally. "You made me feel young again," Spielberg reportedly told him. "You reminded me what it felt like to fall in love with stories." Their relationship is not about hierarchy, it's about lineage. Abrams represents continuity, the passing of imagination from one era to the next. Spielberg never claimed him as a successor, but rather as proof that inspiration, when shared, multiplies. In one interview, Abrams reflected, "He never told me how to do things. He showed me what it means to care." That lesson became his compass as he took on Star Trek and Star Wars, two universes built on wonder, the very emotion Spielberg gave the world decades before. For Spielberg, seeing Abrams thrive is not pride, it's gratitude. Gratitude that his own spark didn't fade, but found new life in the hands of someone who once restored his old reels, and, in doing so, helped preserve his legacy for generations to come. Number 2, Kathleen Kennedy, the woman he trusted with his dreams. Number 2 on Spielberg's list is Kathleen Kennedy, the woman who began as his assistant and became one of the most powerful figures in modern cinema. Their story started in the early 1980s when Kennedy worked as a production coordinator on Raiders of the Lost Ark. Spielberg noticed her precision, her calm under pressure, and a rare intuition that seemed to anticipate what a director needed before he said it aloud. "She was never just an assistant," he once said. "She was a storyteller in disguise." As his career exploded, so did hers. Spielberg brought Kennedy onto every project that mattered, trusting her not just with logistics, but with his vision itself. Together with Frank Marshall, they built Amblin Entertainment, the studio behind E.T., Back to the Future, and Jurassic Park. Kennedy was the quiet force behind the curtain, keeping the chaos of creativity and rhythm. An Amblin producer once remarked, "Steven would dream, and Kathy would make it real." That partnership redefined how Hollywood saw producers. She wasn't a gatekeeper, she was a bridge between art and execution, and Spielberg treated her as an equal long before the industry did. When George Lucas sought a new leader for Lucasfilm, Spielberg's recommendation was immediate: Kathleen Kennedy. Under her leadership, Star Wars found a new generation of believers. For Spielberg, it was both an act of pride and surrender, watching someone he once mentored now carry the same responsibility he once bore, keeping the magic alive. Their relationship is built on trust so deep that it rarely needs words. In interviews, Kennedy calls Spielberg a moral anchor, someone who reminds you why we tell stories in the first place. And Spielberg, in turn, describes her as the person who taught me that leadership is empathy disguised as confidence. Decades later, their partnership stands as one of Hollywood's quiet miracles, proof that respect, loyalty, and shared purpose can outlast even the biggest blockbusters. Number 1, John Williams, The Sound of His Soul. At the very top of Spielberg's list is John Williams, not just a composer, but the heartbeat of his storytelling. Their collaboration began in 1974 with The Sugarland Express, a modest film by a young director still trying to find his place. When Spielberg first heard Williams's themes, he said it felt like hearing emotion turned into sound. "He doesn't just score my movies," Spielberg once reflected. "He scores my life." From the haunting two-note terror of Jaws to the sweeping awe of E.T., from the adventure of Indiana Jones to the quiet dignity of Schindler's List, their partnership defined not only a generation of cinema, but also the emotional vocabulary of millions. When Williams's music plays, you don't just watch a Spielberg film, you feel it. Crew members often recall the two of them in the recording studio, sitting side by side as if time had stopped. "Steven doesn't give John direction," one engineer said. "He listens and smiles." It was a friendship built not on words, but on trust, deeper than any contract could write. Williams, now in his 90s, still speaks of Spielberg with affection that borders on reverence. "He brings out the best in me," he once said. "Every time he calls, I feel like I'm starting over, like I'm 20 again." For Spielberg, Williams is more than a collaborator. He is the voice of everything unsaid. When Schindler's List premiered, Spielberg admitted that the music made him weep more than the images. "John found the emotion I couldn't express," he said. "He gave my silence meaning." 5 decades, more than 20 films, and countless memories later, their bond remains one of the purest in the history of art. Two men who discovered that sometimes the deepest friendship doesn't need dialogue at all, because every great story needs a heartbeat. And for Spielberg, that heartbeat has always been John Williams. When asked what unites these 5 people, Tom Hanks, Drew Barrymore, J.J. Abrams, Kathleen Kennedy, and John Williams, Spielberg pauses. Then, almost whispering, he says, "They're my story, not the films. Them." Behind every masterpiece he's ever made lies a fragment of these relationships. Hanks's decency, Drew's innocence, JJ's curiosity, Kathleen's courage, Williams's soul. Together, they form the emotional architecture of his life, a quiet reminder that greatness is never built alone. Few know that Spielberg keeps framed photos of all 5 in his private office. Not awards, not posters, just faces. "They remind me that success means nothing if you can't share it," he once told a friend, and that is his legacy. Not just the films that defined our imagination, but the love that defined his. Because when the lights fade and the audience leaves, the truest story isn't what he directed, it's who he cared for.